right, here we go.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
I know. I want to make sure I made this.
Welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of January the 12th, 2015. Let us all rise for a pledge of allegiance, followed by a period of silent meditation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the chamber. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether you are speaking in favor of or in opposition to the item. Please spell your name for us if you can. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meeting of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date nor plan for a future agenda. And we're going to start with the Mayor's Award of Excellence. Mayor, it's all yours.
Sir, Happy New Year to you all.
You too.
And thank you for allowing me to present the first Mayor's Award of Excellence for the year 2015, which in this case is being presented to Carrie Kimbrough. Carrie is a library service associate at Lincoln City Libraries. She's worked for the city since the year 2010. She was nominated by library coordinator Julie Bino in the categories of customer relations and valor for her quick actions to save the life of a library customer. This past September 3rd, a customer was checking out an item when Carrie noticed that one side of his face was sagging. She also noticed that he used only one arm to look for his library card and seemed disoriented. After quick research on the signs of a stroke, she confirmed that he did indeed have many of the symptoms. She quickly called 911 and notified her supervisor, and emergency personnel took him to the hospital in short order for treatment. Another customer who witnessed the incident later commended Carrie and the staff for handling the emergency situation with speed and with care and with compassion. And a few days after the incident, the man's brother and sister called to thank library staff for all that had been done for him. They said he had a severe stroke and would be in rehabilitation for several months. The stroke victim lived alone, and his brother said that he did not know what would have happened to him if he had not been in the library. Julie wrote, "We are proud of Carrie's initiative and action. She provides great library services each day, and we salute her for her particular actions on that particular day." So it's my pleasure to present Carrie with the Mayor's Award of Excellence for November. Please join me in congratulating her for her perceptiveness, for her empathy with others, and for all the hard work she does on a day-by-day basis. Carrie? Julie is here today and would like to say a few words of congratulations. Her supervisor?
I just want to say thank you for honoring Carrie with this award for her quick actions. We at the library like to think we save lives every day through the programs we do and the services we provide. But this is the first time I think that we've actually done it. So I just want to tell Carrie thank you. Carrie is a young professional with the library in our library staff. She has her master's from the University of Nebraska of Omaha in library science. And I think she is one of the people that is going to lead our profession into the future. So thank you for recognizing her.
I just wanted to add a few words as well. I think that you think often of libraries as places of education and learning, but they're also places of community and service. And what Carrie did that day, shows two things that I wanted to point out. One, she was paying attention to the person in front of her that she'd gotten to know at the library. When she saw that something was wrong, she did something about it. And I think both of those things indicate really great service, and also point out that it's our people who are really the heart and soul of the library. There are quite a few of Carrie's colleagues here today in a back row, and they are also people who every day provide really great service, and they are also the heart and soul of what the library does. And I'd like to just point out all of these people work at Bennett Martin downtown, and I'm very eager for the day when we open a new library downtown, and they will be the heart and soul of that library as well. And I think that we can all agree that we want to live in a community where somebody pays attention and takes action and does that for everybody. So I also congratulate Carrie and thank you for the opportunity. Thanks.
And thank you for the paid political announcement. We appreciate it. I'm in the library all the time, Pat, you know that. So. Go
Would you
ahead.
like to hijack the forum for a personal?
Exactly.
Awesomeness. I'm not so good with public speaking, but I'll give it a whirl. Thank you. Yeah, this really means a lot. It's really an honor. Thank you for what you said, Pat and Juliet. It really means a lot. You're both wonderful. Not exactly what I was expecting to happen when I went to work that day. I give a lot of credit to Julie. She's a great boss and apparently a great person to have around in times of crisis. I'm really just glad that he came to us and we were able to get him some help. So guess it just goes to show that libraries are more than brick walls. We really do our best to help people. Sometimes that means going further than just finding a book or a phone number. So thank you a lot for this, and I'm very grateful.
Great, thank you, and thank you all for all what you do for the city. We appreciate it. We'll give you a minute to clear out if you'd like to. You're welcome to stay for this scintillating meeting. Okay, Teresa, let's
All
go
right.
forward, please.
Certainly. We do request those giving testimony to please clearly state your name and address and to sign in on the sign-in sheet laying on the podium. Our first item will be our public hearing consent agenda. These are items 1 through 15.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
If not, we can vote on these items. Items 1 through 5 were introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Seconded by John. Discussion, call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge, Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Items 6 and 11 through 14 were introduced by Christensen.
So moved. Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion, call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next item would be our public hearing liquor resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward, raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and addresses. Applicants or witnesses are not required to stay for the voting session. I'll call items 16 and 17 together. They're the application of Hy-Vee Restaurant for a Class IK liquor license at 5020 North 27th Street and the related manager application of Scott Schlatter. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you. Just state your name and address.
My name is Steve Parker, 2637 West Washington, Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm the store director at the North 27th Hy-Vee.
Okay. Questions? These are renewals, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, none. Anybody would like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
Next is item 18, manager application of Karen Briette for Whitehead Energy LLC, doing business as U-Stop 26 at 8350 Northwoods Drive. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you really believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Douglas W. Larkins, 3902 South 76th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Sorry about last week.
No problem. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of items 16, 17, and 18.
Second.
Seconded by Trent. Discussion? Call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge, Fellers.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next are our public hearing liquor resolutions. I'll call 19 through 21 together. They're all approving service agreements for golf professionals between the city on behalf of Parks and Rec and Jonathan Benson for the operation of Mahoney Golf Course for a 4-year period, Timothy Rowland for the operation of Pioneers Golf Course for a 4-year period, and Dennis Vance for the operation of Highlands Golf Course for a 4-year period.
Good afternoon. Lynn Johnson with Lincoln Parks and Recreation. I thought I'd provide a brief summary of these agreements, and as Teresa said, these are for a 4-year period for 3 out of the 4 18-hole golf courses. There was a question earlier today, and I probably should have addressed it in my fact sheet. The reason that Holmes is not included is that the compensation at Holmes is different. Because the clubhouse there is being financed with public bond financing, the golf professional there can't derive direct revenue from the operation of that clubhouse. Separate agreement there. It's a true management agreement where we pay that individual, that golf professional, for the management of that facility. All of the revenue comes directly to the city. In this case, the revenue streams are kind of braided and split at these 3 locations. As Teresa said, these are for the 3 18-hole golf courses. They are 4-year agreements. The agreements allow the golf professionals to operate the clubhouse and the driving range rental. They derive revenue from food and beverage sales in the clubhouse and on the golf course, from the sale of golf-related merchandise in the clubhouse, from golf lessons and player development programming, and then also from driving range use. The provisions of the agreement state that the golf professionals are responsible for collection of green fees, for rental of the golf course, for promoting golf play, including the golf leagues and tournaments, for providing golf lessons and player development programming, for coordination of golf course marshaling program, which is important for pace of play or speed of play on the courses, for securing and managing the liquor license for each one of the facilities, for also securing and managing the food handler's permit for the facilities, and then providing building custodial services. The approach that we've taken in compensation with these agreements is different than in prior years. This is truly an incentive-based approach to compensation. It means that the pro's compensation on behalf of the city is really based on the amount of play that happens at the courses. So the professionals will be paid a fee per round played at the course. They'll also get a percentage of the golf cart revenue for the courses, for the carts that are leased at the courses. There is a provision in the agreements that provides for an incentive payment if the number of rounds reaches a targeted number of rounds. So that we're trying to encourage everybody to try to increase the amount of play that we see at the city courses. And then we're also implementing a new point-in-time survey. And based on that, there's also an incentive built into the contracts if those customer satisfaction surveys exceed the benchmarks that are identified. And then one of the things I think that is also important and that I've been asked about a couple of times is that the agreements do include termination provisions, both for convenience and for cause. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions?
Could you just elaborate a bit about how you determine the pay rate per round?
We looked at essentially the rate that other golf professionals are being compensated. And then we looked at what we previously have compensated the professionals, and then, to be perfectly honest, we negotiated that rate per round because the golf professionals are responsible for paying the staff in the clubhouse building, and so that comes a portion of the fee that is paid the golf professional is also helping to pay the staff that they have in the building. So we've looked at industry standards. We think that these are probably fairly close. One of the things that I think we all recognize is that being a golf professional isn't as lucrative as it once was. That just like we are seeing more strain on our revenues, the golf professionals are also struggling a bit as well.
What industry standards, did you look at comparable cities? How did you choose?
We did.
Data.
We talked with the Professional Golf Association, the PGA, and had a conversation with them about what they're seeing across the country, but also locally within the region, to try to determine what a reasonable total rate of compensation from the city is for these service agreements.
And we had a little back and forth this weekend because I had some questions about this, and you mentioned that this compensation package does not include health benefits. Is that correct? Could you?
That is correct, yeah. Essentially, each one of the golf professionals is running their own business. So they're small businessmen. So the compensation they receive from the city is part of the overall revenue that they have that comes into their business. They're responsible for covering their own benefits as well as the benefits of their employees. So essentially, the compensation that the city provides is gross revenue to their overall business operation.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
What I think I see we're trying to do here is buck the trend. And the trend nationally is fewer and fewer rounds of golf being played. And assuming everything goes well, and we do reverse that here in Lincoln, everything's fine. But what happens if we see a continued decline in the number of rounds of golf played, and these professionals are not happy in year 2 or year 3? Is there an out for them, or what happens?
There is, and Roy, that's a great question. We are trying to buck the national trend, to be perfectly honest. We are trying to increase the amount of play that we're seeing in Lincoln. We know that there's a lot of competition out there because of the private rounds. There is a provision in the contract that allows for the golf professionals also to request termination of the agreement. So they have the ability, if they find that it's just not working, that they can come to us. They have to give us 120 days notice. So that gives us enough time that we could hopefully seek and find a replacement. But on both sides of the equation, there is the opportunity to terminate the agreement.
Okay.
Carl.
Thank you. It's pretty great to be able to talk about golf in January.
Now, if we could just be out playing golf, that would help.
Okay, so as I understand it, the intent of the contract here is to really have this cooperative venture, which gives incentive to the pros to run an efficient operation, attracting people to use their course. Likewise, it incentivizes the city to also get our rounds up. I recall last year we were talking about some of the improvements to some of the golf courses and facilities. Where are we with that, Lynn?
It's a great question. We've got 2 significant capital improvement projects going on right now. One of them is to replace the irrigation system at Ager Golf Course. That irrigation system is more than 50 years old at this point. It's a manual system. We have to have staff out there turning it on and turning it off. And so through some Keno funding, we are going in and we're replacing that irrigation system, and we're also transferring that system from Lincoln City water system to an irrigation well. So we'll save some expense there as well. One of the other priority changes that was identified by the golf committee was to go in and renovate the restrooms at Pinehurst Golf Course. If you've been to that golf course, particularly the women's restrooms, they were completely inadequate, didn't meet any sort of ADA standards. And I think one of the things that the golfing public that they'll find when they get out to Pinehurst this spring is 2 brand new restrooms that will meet ADA standards and that will be a much more pleasant experience. And then we did not generate enough revenue last year to cover the rest of the capital improvement programs that we had hoped to accomplish. So we'll be discussing those capital improvements with the golf committee and kind of reprioritizing. Kind of share a little bit of information. Our projections are all based on 170,900 rounds. Last year we played about 164,000 rounds. That's 7,000 rounds difference. Our average revenue per round is about $20 per round. So that 7,000 rounds potentially would have generated about $140,000, which was just about the amount that we had hoped to direct to capital improvements. So we're hoping for a better year this year, to be perfectly honest. But we got to keep hammering away at that, trying to see if we can generate some revenue to support those needed capital improvements on the courses.
Thank you. Trent?
But it seemed, I looked at the golf numbers that you sent me, and it seemed like most of those rounds were acre, right? It was about 5,000 rounds worth of difference at acre.
Yeah, we did have, Ager was down. Holmes was up just a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're continuing to work on getting that number of rounds up. And Ager is one of the places. Unfortunately, we had hired a gentleman to be our golf player development program supervisor there. He unexpectedly passed away last week, so we've got a bit of a kind of a regrouping and a reestablishing that program there, and we're working on that at this point.
And I had a question about the customer satisfaction surveys. Does that include course maintenance? Because as I remember, I don't think the pros have a purview over the maintenance of the course. And it would seem if that was part of the customer satisfaction survey, that maybe they should have some control over the maintenance of the courses themselves.
The way that, and the survey is not finalized yet. We're continuing to work with the golf committee on it, but the way it's organized is that it's got about 3 elements that relate to the clubhouse. Kind of customer satisfaction, customer service. How were they greeted at the counter? The quality of the food and beverage service, the quality, the merchandising in the clubhouse, and then also the cleanliness of the facility. Mm-hmm. And then there's another section of the survey that has to do with the maintenance of the course, the condition of the greens, the condition of the tees, mm-hmm. condition of fairways, condition of rough and bunkers. And so the professionals are only responsible for those 4 elements that relate to the clubhouse, and then the superintendents are responsible for those elements that relate to the condition of play on the course. I guess pace of play is one of the other things that we're asking about.
John?
Going back to the Ager golf course, that's sort of a feeder to get younger people into golfing, and if you're wanting to increase the other courses, and 5,000 down, I mean, that's critical. I don't remember what the percentage was, but any other comments on that, how you can get it going better?
We are. One of the things that we're working with both the Nebraska chapter of the PGA and the local YMCA is a concept that was developed a couple of years ago called team golf, and it's essentially getting youth involved in kind of a team approach to playing golf. And this year we're going to be partnering with the YMCA. We think it's going to be very successful in terms of attracting young people and families to participate. So I think that'll be a brand new way to get youth and children introduced to the game of golf in kind of a competitive way, a fun way, a little different way than probably a lot of other people were introduced to golf. So. And the YMCA they're the largest youth program provider, youth sports program provider in the city. So it's a great partnership, and we're going to have access, I think, to a lot of youth and a lot of families through that partnership.
Is that a new thing this year?
We tried it last year,
okay.
and we had some success. Unfortunately, the teams were small, but we think by partnering with the YMCA and essentially using their outreach methods, that we'll have a much larger participation this year. At least that's the hope.
I saw it on the youth flyer when we got it a couple weeks ago, and I was kind of excited about that. I don't think they have a program for kindergartners, but we'll get them in there.
We'll get them plugged in. Yeah.
Any other questions? Lynn, 2 things. Pace of play you talked about.
Yep.
So how are we coming with our volunteer marshal program? Or can we get it up and running? I mean, we didn't get it really up and running last year.
That would be true. We didn't get that started until I think about July last year. We're prepared to go into the season. The program is set up at this point. Okay. Each one of the golf professionals does have a list of volunteers who are interested in that.
Secondarily, one of the things that was brought up in the report from the PGA was a set of forward tees for youth and for women. Are we going to do something with that? Can we, if nothing else, can we just not put temporary tees up front, 45 or 50 yards, to at least start that process? I mean, one of the things we were told is that the distances can be daunting for youth and for females, and that's the best way to get them attracted in. So can we at least think about that, gentlemen? Putting something up, even if they're temporary. They don't have to. I understand there's a cost to putting in a real tee, but can we set something up front or something that would get us started down that road.
Don't underestimate the effect, the impact of,
Do not-
of
do-
awful
do-
bathrooms
Do
for
not,
women,
yeah.
women golfers.
Do not, that, I didn't say that. That's what the LPGA said. I did not say that, so.
A great suggestion, and yeah, we do need to figure out how to address forward tees, because we know that
Yeah.
that's a significant
And again,
part of our
I
strategy.
realize putting in full-time tees is expensive, but we could do something, I think, with temporary tees, even if we moved them around a little bit to get us going, okay?
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Lynn. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Anybody who would like to speak to this item? I think we've answered the staff questions. Next item, please.
All right, next we'll call item 22, accepting the report of new and pending claims against the city and approving disposition of claims set forth for the period of December 1st through the 31st, 2014.
Anybody who has a claim they'd like to speak about, come forward, please. Come forward, please. I see none. Any staff questions? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call item 23, approving a joint information technology interlocal agreement between the State of Nebraska Office of the Chief Information Officer and the city for the exchange of information technology services between the parties, establishing a board of governments, and identifying services currently being provided.
Good afternoon, council members. Steve Henderson with Information Services. Last November, I was here to review with you a set of revisions to an interlocal that exists between the city and county, addressing the exchange of information technology services between those two organizations. You approved those revisions, and once again, I thank you for that action. Today, what is before you for your consideration is a proposed new interlocal between the city and the state of Nebraska. That agreement has been developed in partnership between Information Services, the City Attorney's Office, and the state's Office of the Chief Information Officer, Office of the CIO. The state's Office of the CIO is essentially the state's equivalent of Information Services. What is the reason for this agreement? There is an increasing exchange of technology services between the city and the state. And not only more services, but for any one of those services, more of the services. So we think it's appropriate to get a more formalized and documented agreement in place between the two entities. Some examples of those services that are prominent these days, mainframe services. You may recall me talking about the fact we have moved mainframe services from being offered here at the city to the state now, and we are dependent on that. We are using their content and document management services extensively, and we are both using one another's networking services. I'll mention four quick important elements of the draft interlocal before you. First of all, just the obvious, it documents those technology services that are being exchanged and the underlying rate or cost structure for those services. It establishes an agreement where we will pay one another for those services that are invoiced back and forth between the two organizations. It includes the customary administrative protections so that if we would need to exit from the agreement due to funding issues, or if we would desire to exit from the agreement to pursue other options, there are provisions for how we would do that. And lastly, it establishes a small group to administer the daily details of how this would work. Those individuals are the city's finance director, the city's chief information officer, and the state's chief information officer. I know you have a full agenda today and you need to move through your business quickly, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about this proposed interlocal.
Carl. Thank you. Steve, is there redundancy? And redundancy may not be a bad thing in terms of what the city provides and the state provides in our network.
Yes, we offer similar services. I think in the case where we are exchanging services, it's not an explicit matter of redundancy. Usually we are buying services from the state that they can provide more effectively or more efficiently than we can. And if the state is acquiring services from us, there's a particular reason, for instance, in networking, that we may have offers of services that they can't do and we can deliver to them. So yes, we offer similar services, but I think the exchange covers gaps where each party needs the other.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
All right, we'll go on to our public hearing, ordinances, second reading, and related resolutions. Item 24 is change of zone 14030, application of the acting planning director for a change of zone from H3 highway commercial to R2 residential and I1 industrial on property generally located at North 44th Street and Colfax Circle.
Good afternoon, David Carey, Acting Planning Director. Really here just to answer any questions you have on this item. It's really a cleanup item based on the fact that we, in 1979, change in the zoning code, created a non-conforming situation for existing homes. This is to clean up that situation so that we do not have a non-conforming use situation there today.
Any questions?
Just wanted to say thank you for doing this. I'm sure the homeowners will appreciate not having to go through the extra steps if they want to make changes to their properties, if this goes well and passes today, or next time we vote on it.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call item 25, text amendment 14017, amending the maximum building height provisions in the AG district by amending section 2763-250 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to add the AG district to the list of districts in which a permitted use exceeding the maximum height permitted in a district may be allowed by special permit, and amending section 2772010 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to increase the allowable building height in the AG district for farmstead splits from 30 feet to 35 feet.
Good afternoon. Dave Johnson. I'm with Studio 951, 800 P Street here in Lincoln. I had originally approached planning several months ago. I had a couple clients building fairly large homes on rural acreages, 20 plus acres. And they just so happened that both of them sort of wanted this sort of tower element, stair tower element, that they could go up to a third level and look out over their property and such. And that was exceeding our 35-foot height. So I approached planning as to a good mechanism to amend the height, because at that point, the AG zoning wasn't a zoning district where you could amend the height via special permit. So planning came back with the idea of, instead of just changing the height in AG, actually adding AG to the list of groups that you can apply for a special permit to increase the height. In that process, they also found a discrepancy back from when they first did the farm splits in '79, and then there was an action in '93. So there was this kind of AG, AGR farm split kind of discrepancy between 30 feet and 35 feet. So this also just cleans all that up to 35 feet. The two special permit actions that were voted on by planning at the time of this text amendment have been approved by planning and are just pending this action.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Have questions? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call item 26, text amendment 14019, amending chapter 2768 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to personal wireless facilities by amending sections 2768020, 2768030, 2768120, and 2768130 to modify the definitions of abandonment and partial abandonment, to modify administrative permit provisions, and to delete provisions regarding the initial term and renewal of special permits and administrative permits, and repealing sections 2768040, 050, 060, and 070 of the Lincoln Municipal Code in their entirety.
David Carey, Acting Planning Director. As the applicant, really one of the main points to be made here is that what we're doing is we're bringing the wireless facilities into the same way of being handled as other situations, instead of requiring the 15-year renewal period. Some background on this, that when this was first installed as a requirement, there was a lot of uncertainty as to how the wireless community and the technology was going to be handled moving forward. It was brand new. What this does is it basically, now that we feel in general that these issues are fairly normal, that we can handle them on a case-by-case basis, and this change does not change the ability of the city to have control over those applications as they come in as well, and the applicability of whatever requirements are already on the books for those locations would still be in force. This is just adjusting the fact that we do not want to move forward with having that 15-year renewal requirement for wireless facilities.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call item 27, vacation 14012, vacating approximately .08 acres of Y Street right-of-way adjacent to Lot 1, 10th and Y Street between North 10th Street and vacated North 11th Street.
Members of the City Council, David Landis, Urban Development Department Director, and the applicant in this case. We have been working with Chris Elsey for a housing development project at 1100 Y Street. It's in the North Bottoms. And in fact, we've accomplished our objective for the redevelopment agreement, and this is the road. There we are. This is the space where there is a road behind the project that adds a new connection up through this street and creates greater connectivity and movement of traffic to disturb the neighborhood less and to make it more compact for the developer. When we got to looking at the exact right-of-way, we discovered that it was not in what you and I would regard as a straight line. There is a portion of the right-of-way that is greater than 60 feet by this amount right here. There's a portion which is less than 60 feet, which is what you want for a right-of-way, and that's here. This land is ours. This land is the university's. The university and the city have agreed to swap land, and this is what it allows us to do. It allows us to have a straight right-of-way that is 60 feet wide, which is standard for a street. It creates the opportunity to do what is normal and is advantageous, and this is done without an exchange of money. We're giving up a little bit less land than we're getting from the university, but in either case, it makes the project work and creates the street system that we would want. Other questions?
Questions? It's not Dave. Thank you. Anybody would like to speak to this item? Staff questions. Next item, please.
Next will be item 28, vacation 14011, vacating approximately .04 acres of street stub at the northeast corner of West C Street and Southwest 6th Street, and approximately .05 acres of the east-west alley north of West B Street, east of Southwest 6th Street.
Anybody would like to speak to this item? Great. Okay, David, do you know anything about that? Can you speak to it just a little bit, please?
David Carey, Acting Planning Director. Just looking at the staff report, what we're looking at is to, just get back to that. Finding of conformance with the comprehensive plan based on the analysis. Just getting back into this. Planning Commission did vote 9-0 to agree with that conformity review, and that the funds for the vacated right-of-way have been paid to the city clerk with the requirements of Chapter 14.2 of the Municipal Code being satisfied. So as far as a vacation is concerned, the paperwork is in place. And actually, getting into the details of this, I might, if there are questions, we have Steve Henderson here. He could answer those questions. The applicant, I don't think, is here right now.
Okay. David, who is the applicant, by the way?
It is Marcia Kinning of ESP. Sorry, Marcia Kinning of ESP.
Okay.
David, this was on consent agenda at Planning Commission, was it not?
Correct. I believe it was pulled off, but then no one came forward to speak on it at the meeting as well.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anybody who would like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call item 29, amending chapter 21.09 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to registration of neglected buildings by adding a new section numbered 21.09.165 to provide for the deposit and distribution of fees and penalties.
Good afternoon, Chris Connolly, City Law Department. When chapter 21.09 was added to the code last year, we did not have a clear path for cash to flow in the event that the city had to do registration of neglected buildings. And so what this ordinance does is take care of that. Now, we're not talking about situations where the owner will be registering the building. Those fees will still go into building and safety and they'll stay there. But in situations where the city needs to register it, we had some discussions last fall, and the problem resolution team stepped forward and said that they would take care of the fees. And so they will go to building and safety to take care of the work that they're doing. And in the event that we're able to recover some of those fees and whatever related costs go along with it, this simply is basically an instruction to finance that when that money comes in, to transfer it back to the line item for problem resolution team. So with that, if you have any questions.
John.
Mr. Connolly, do you have an idea of just what this might amount to on an annual basis, dollar-wise?
Right now, no. I mean, we're just getting started, so it's hard to know what the pattern's going to be. I would expect we're going to have 2 or 3 registrations here in the next year, perhaps by the city. Now, when are we going to collect back on those? Probably 1 to 2 years after that. It's hard to tell yet.
But is this like $1,000, $20,000, or?
Oh, in terms of the dollar amount, we're probably looking at, if we had 3 registrations by the city, that would be $1,500. Now, if there are related costs, I'm not sure what those would be if PRT, and I don't know if PRT is going to get there in terms of helping with demolition costs. Now we could be looking at $15,000 or $20,000 per property. But at this point, we're really only looking at probably fees. Demolition costs, we think probably still can come out of building and safety.
Thank you.
Really, the issue, Chris, is that we don't have very much money in the PRT anyway. We've accrued over the years a little amount. It won't take very many of these to run us dry. And then there was the question about how would that money be paid back. And so that this is really like making this a revolving fund, that it would come back to the PRT.
That's correct.
For use in future. If we get it off the lien, there's no guarantee that we won't sit on the lien for a considerable amount of time too. So
that's correct. And unfortunately, 2109, what it says in other parts of it is that as fees come in, they will go to building and safety. So everything would go to building and safety initially, and then this is just a way to try and get those monies back if we can.
Correct. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Anybody would like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call items 30 and 31 together. They're annexation 14007, amending the Lincoln corporate limits map by annexing approximately 12 acres of property generally located at Anthony Lane and O Street, and change of zone 14032, application of Heritage Lakes LLC for a change of zone from AG Agriculture to R3 Residential on property generally located at Anthony Lane and O Street.
Chair, members of the council, my name is Tom Houston. My address is 233 South 13th Street here in Lincoln. Appearing today before you on behalf of Nelson Construction and Development out of Des Moines, Iowa, which will be the developer, and then Good Neighbor Care, which is an operator. The 2 items on your agenda really relate to the annexation and change of zone. We are in front of the Planning Commission back on December 10th, at which time the Planning Commission approved a special permit for a community unit plan and a residential care facility. On the overhead, I have placed a site plan that was approved by the Planning Commission. The senior care residential facility indicated that it was approved for 229 residents, and that's because that's how the code's written. In actuality, we believe that the facility is really going to be built for 24 memory care units, 30 independent living units, and 51 assisted living units for a total of 105 dwelling units. We noted at the Planning Commission that this project will generate less traffic than a single-family dwelling development would on the property. In working with my clients, I instructed them that we need to work closely with the neighborhood. We sent the neighborhood an introductory letter back on June 9th. At that time, the proposal included 165 dwelling units containing 4 stories. We then had a meeting at the Southeast Community College in mid-June where over 40 people attended. As a result of that meeting, my client made commitments to the neighborhood consisting of that the use would be a senior living facility, which, as I mentioned, is a very low traffic generator, that the facility would not have any private wells, that we would be on city water and sewer, and the neighbors were concerned about the impact on their private wells, and so they were appreciative of the fact that there would not be any competing wells. We made a commitment to the neighborhood that we would only seek annexation of our 10 affected acres, and that we would not we would support them in their effort to deal with the city separately if and when that they would be annexed. We agreed that well, it's really the western area of this property is largely a floodplain, as shown by this map. And we agreed that we would retain all of the existing natural screening within that floodplain area to help screen this project from the adjacent neighborhood. Back on the site plan, we also agreed to retain all the parking lot located on the north side of the building. I think that also can be seen by our kind of conceptual drawing. That location of the parking lot on the north will help screen any of the adjacent neighbors from any light intrusion from the parking lot. We did confirm all of these commitments to the neighborhood back in June. We sent them a letter in November announcing the schedule moving forward with the Planning Commission, then also with the City Council, and also discussed the density reduction, the scaling back of the building from 4 stories back to 3 stories, and reduction of dwelling units from 165 back to 105. The staff reports indicate full approval, a recommendation of approval without qualification, and we received the recommendation from the Planning Commission on a 9-0 vote. That there was a couple waivers that were included in the special permit that really help us address some of the site planning issues on the height increase. And our special permit does address what happens to the property when the property south of us that may develop, and we have made accommodation for additional improvements that would be required to O Street and additional improvements that would be required for the access in connecting sidewalks, et cetera. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I would ask for your support on the annexation and the change of zone.
Questions? Does this, Tom, does this kind of totally enclose the acreages that are there?
No, the acreages, let's see if my site.
I know we have Waterford on the east.
Yeah, Waterford's on the north and the east, and really the acreages that exist in the Anthony Lane area are really abut the YMCA soccer complex on the west, but to the south, I don't think they have any through access. As we know, the sewer line's coming from the north and heading to the south, and it's at O Street now, and it's crossing O Street, and it will be down to A Street in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but it will continue south.
Well, I guess I understand the concern of the people in the acreage, but we really have this kind of hodgepodge there where we have city, and then we have these acreages, and then we go to Waterford, and Waterford is back inside the city limits too. So
right.
At some point, it will have to be addressed.
Well, and that is this discussion we've had with the planning department, that the city does have the ability in its comprehensive plan to address the annexation policy, and will be identifying areas within the city or adjacent to the city limits that need to be annexed at some point.
My point is, I don't think this hinders or helps that. It's going to happen all in good time, so.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Any other questions? Larry?
Do you happen to know, this is currently under rural fire district coverage, but will come under LFR for emergency medical services and fire rescue operations. Do you happen to know what the travel times are from the nearest fire departments?
I do not. I did look at that in response to a question from Councilmember Camp, and it was my observation that this area would be served by station number 9, okay. Which is roughly, I think it's on North 70th Street is my recollection from the map, but it looked like to me it would be within, maybe not a 4, but maybe a 5-minute travel time.
one of the reasons I ask is just that senior living centers have been one of the major driving up the numbers for some of those emergency medical service calls. So it's
Our population is aging. That's
Yeah.
it's going to happen, yes.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody would like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call items 32, 33, and 34. Item 32 is the conditional annexation and zoning agreement between Knoll and Gloria Chad and the City of Lincoln for the development and annexation of property generally located at Northwest 40th Street and West Vine. Annexation 14006, amending the Lincoln corporate limits map by annexing approximately 22 acres of property generally located at West Vine Street between Northwest 27th and Northwest 40th Street. And change of zone 14031, application of Knoll and Gloria Chad for a change of zone from AG Agriculture to I-1 Industrial on approximately 22 acres of property generally located at West Vine Street between Northwest 27th and Northwest 40th Street.
Yes, I'm Noel Chad. I'm the owners of the property, and I do have the land construction here also with us today. What we're basically asking for is we're going to eventually sell this property, but in the meantime, we are rebuilding the interstate highway and need a place to stockpile the concrete and stuff off it. And we need the AG1 zoning to accomplish that. And so that's what we're asking for.
Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Chad. So this rock crusher operation is going to be part of the work on the interstate and Northwest 48th Street maybe too, I'm guessing.
We've got about 6 to 10 miles of interstate and highway and there to finish up. And basically it'll be a stockpile for the first year or so, and then eventually we'll put it into the industrial zone. That whole area is scheduled for industrial zoning, and this also fits into that requirement then. So, yeah.
So you're envisioning this use to be a temporary use while that's under construction, or is this long-term?
Well, it'll be long-term, yeah. That the whole area will eventually be industrial zoning, and this will be just the first phase of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chad. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Gary Varley, 5840 Northwest Gary Street here in Lincoln, and I am co-owner and president of Land. It's now Land Excavating and Demolition, no longer Land Construction, Inc. We've been working with Knoll for many years. We took the majority of the dirt out of this area when it was a borrow pit, still is a borrow pit. Now we are in the process of negotiating with Knoll to buy that 22 acres, which is on the east side of this property. And I guess I'm just here to answer any questions that you might have about the crushing operation.
John?
Yeah, I might ask, we've had some other situations where there's been some citizen concern about dust and other, dust debris and so forth.
We've been following the, as per the city or the county, we've been maintaining the route from the entrance to the pit east to southwest or northwest 27th Street and around the corner and up and over the bridge. We will, of course, maintain that, continue to maintain that. I will add that there is another special permit adjacent to us for dirt still, not crushing, but for dirt. They access that same area, and we'd want to make sure that, they're held to the same standard we are to. We typically, while we're running out of there, we keep the blade on it, we keep the moisture on it. I mean, sometimes it's hard to keep up, depends on how dry it is and how wet it gets, but we feel we've done a pretty good job. We did all the work for the interstate project there that's with Hawkins. We did all that, hauling all that fill into the median, a wide median that's now coming together, and we've got all that. And as Noel mentioned, we eventually will be pulling all of the concrete, which is no longer going to become part of the state. It's going to become part of the contractor or the contractor's use or whatever. So that's why we're going to use this as a temporary stockpile, I guess you would call it, but it's going to be a big pile. Our crushing operation, if you guys know that area, there's a pile of concrete east of there on the east side of 27th Street that is state-owned. They're no longer going to take any there. They've got enough to finish what they started to do with the projects that went from, well, actually all the way from east of Omaha or east of Lincoln all the way through town. But with that being said, our pile is probably going to be in that same range of 50 to 60,000 cubic yards of material, which is a pretty good sized pile, roughly 150 by 500 by about 20 foot deep, 20 foot tall. As far as, our long range goals are to develop this as a future site for our business. We currently are on West O Street, not too far away from there, but we're pretty limited. We're leasing that property right now, and we're pretty limited to the as to the area and the area that we need. So as far as crushing goes, we won't be like crushing every day, every day all year long. We typically a pile that size, that we may have that for 5 or 6 years. We typically crush now twice a year, usually 7,000, 10,000 ton maybe. I see maybe a little bit of an increase in that since we will have more. We probably are going to crush a little more at a time. But for at the beginning here, for the first couple of years, you won't see much activity there other than a stockpile site for this material. We won't probably crush it until probably late 2016, or I should say early 2016, or in the 2016 season. So, any more questions about that?
Hours of operation, if you're going to crush, that's one of the issues we always get.
Yeah, typically our hours during the season are 7 to 5:30. We are in an area there where there's no houses left over in that area, adjacent to, again, a couple of commercial properties, and that it doesn't create a great deal of nuisance to anybody. Like I said, it's only maybe twice a year when we'd have somebody come in for 3 or 4 weeks to crush a pile. We can't afford to crush it all at once, but we are the long range plan is to wind up putting our office and our shop and that over there, similar to what we have now. But obviously we've got a lot more room here than what we would where we're at now. So we're in a 5-year lease with the current owner that owns the property where we're at now, and we're looking that far ahead probably before we would be building the building or putting a building or anything else up. But it would be someplace that would be accessing for our concrete from time to time. I had one question too. There was according to the special permit, there were some restrictions that we've adhered to. The maintenance obviously is something that we're going to have to abide by, but I know there's been some restrictions as far as leaving the site, not accessing Northwest 40th to Holdridge. When Knoll applied for the permit 20-some years ago, there was some restrictions because some landowners had some issues problems with it, or had some concerns. I don't know if this is the place to talk about that now, but at some point I may want to try to relax those restrictions, if not completely, maybe in a temporary fashion because of the work that's starting to happen out there. There's another project, the Northwest 48th Street project, which is on the north end of the project we're on now. There's a bunch of concrete removal there too, and when that time comes to take that material, provided it comes to me, it makes more sense to use those routes than to send them down to the construction zone onto O Street and around to 27th, which is quite congested all the time. But again, that's maybe a hurdle for a different meeting at a different time, because right now we're just looking for the annexation and the
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roy.
Thank you.
Anybody would like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
All right, I'll call items 35 through 39. They are approving a real estate sales agreement between the city and R.C. Kruger Development to purchase approximately 9.37 acres of city-owned property generally located at 2201 South 84th Street, Comp Plan Amendment 14008, amending the 2040 Comp Plan to change the future land use map from urban residential to commercial on approximately 9.2 acres, from public and semi-public to commercial on approximately 0.8 acres, and from urban residential designation to public and semi-public designation on approximately 0.2 acres, generally located at South 84th and Carl Ridge Road. Change of Zone 14028, application of R.C. Kruger Development with the consent of the city and Lincoln Federal Savings and Loan for a change from R1 residential to P public use, from R1 residential P public use to H4 general commercial, and from R3 residential to H4 general commercial on property generally located at South 84th and Carl Ridge Road. Special permit 14045, application of R.C. Kruger Development with the consent of the city and Lincoln Federal Savings and Loan to develop planned service commercial to develop up to 130,000 square feet of mini warehouses in the H4 General Commercial District with requested waivers of the required rear and side yard setbacks and the requirement that post-development flows be less than pre-development flows for an on-site detention pond on property at South 84th and Carl Ridge Road, and vacation 14009, vacating the Viewpoint Drive right-of-way lying north of Carl Ridge Road, generally located at South 84th and Carl Ridge Road.
Dave, before we start, I want to recognize that we've been joined by a bunch of young people who are members of the cultural exchange with UNL, and they are citizens of Southern Africa. If I have that wrong, I apologize. That's what was given to me. We thank you for coming and being part of this, and we'll try not to look like we're babbling.
Linda Major is here from the university, and Linda,
sure,
you want to say just a little bit more about?
You have to come up here and do it, Linda, because we're on TV, and so would we, but here we are.
Thank you, and thank you for recognizing our guests. I have 20 students here who are from 5 Southern African countries. We have Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Angola, South Africa, and Botswana. They'll be on the UNL campus for 4 weeks studying civic engagement, and then the 5th week we'll be traveling together to Birmingham, Alabama, and Washington, D.C. So thank you so much. We're here to drop in and look at local government in action.
Thank you very much, and welcome to you all. Okay, Dave, it's all yours.
Thank you, Councilman. David Landis, Urban Development Department Director, the applicant for the first of these several. The rest of these, in fact, we are not the applicant for, but in fact, Mr. Kruger is. And of course, the Planning Department's here to answer questions as well. So we're going to carry the ball on the first one, which is 35. It's a real estate sales agreement from the City of Lincoln to R.C. Kruger Development Company, about 9.3 acres. The price is $775,000. Mr. Kruger is also going to make efficient use of a small piece of land that would otherwise be landlocked that is now owned by Lincoln Federal, and he's going to take possession of that. That will become part of the storage units that he intends to put at this location. That is what occasions the zoning change from R3 to H4. This is the highest of the prices that were offered to us. We had 6 different prices or proposals from 4 different developers. We were also approached by other developers, both in the residential and in the commercial field. And in all cases, this wound up being the highest price that was offered to the city. It's also the case that this particular proposal had the approval of the neighborhood, in part because I think they believe that there'll be less traffic occasioned by this usage than some of the other usages for the proposals that were before the council and before the city. And we concur in that case. So that was of concern to the neighborhood. They predict that this will be a quiet neighbor, going out of their way to be as accommodating as possible, assisting particularly with landscaping on the part of the project that will be adjacent to existing landholders in the neighborhood. For all of those reasons, the Urban Development Department urges the adoption of this real estate sales agreement between the City of Lincoln and Mr. Kruger.
Questions, please. John?
I'd just like to add that Mr. Landis and other city officials were very helpful. There were quite a few meetings that spanned several months on this particular plot of land. And I just compliment all who participated. I think the end result will be very good for the neighbors. And so I look forward to the hearing today and learning more about what's going on.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, Dave. Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item?
Hi, my name's Rick Kruger, president of RC Kruger Development Company, and before I start, I'd like to acknowledge our guests. I've been fortunate to visit all of those countries, and I would encourage any of the dozens of people watching to go over and avail yourselves of that fine country over there, because it is quite beautiful.
We've seen our Nielsen ratings.
So, this went through Planning Commission 9-0. We, after the council asked that this be re-advertised, we talked to staff and they said, bring us a proposal, which is what we did. Just to orientate you, this is 84th Street. This is the main area. The green area is those parts of the area that will not be built on. We have 2 detention cells, one of them right here, which is fairly large. That drains out through an existing pipe this way. We have another one that's underground over here, which goes into a system that's over there. The permit is for 130,000 square foot. What's drawn on there today is 123,000 square foot. Since we met with the neighbors, there's been one change to note, and that is originally we had up in this area here, that's under the power line easement, and that's where we were going to park RVs, and Lincoln Electric didn't want us to put RVs, so that has changed our site plan. Otherwise, this is what we presented to them. If you have any questions regarding operations, I have Danielle Smith here. She's our regional director. This will be the 7th site for our Big Red storage units. And one other thing, the Public Works Department had asked us to vacate this Viewpoint Road here so they didn't have to maintain it. We went out and met with the abutting neighbors and turned the paperwork in here last week or so to the city office on that. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, and just to clarify though, while you are vacating that road, you will still have a driveway over that.
That will be our entrance. We'll leave the existing pavement in place, and the neighbors get some part of it, and we have the 40 foot or so, 30 foot in the middle.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? That will be the only entrance in?
That's the only entrance,
correct.
yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
That would conclude our public hearing portion. We can move into the voting session.
Okay, let's do that, please.
Public hearing resolutions. Item 19 is the service agreement for golf professionals between the city and Jonathan Benson for the operation of Mahoney Golf Course, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Seconded by Trent. Discussion. Call roll.
Camp.
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Emery.
Yes.
Eskridge. Fellers.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 20 is the service agreement for golf professionals between the city and Timothy Rowland for the operation of Pioneers Golf Course, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Second by John. Discussion. Call roll.
Camp.
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Emery.
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Fellers.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 21 is the service agreement for golf professionals between the city and Dennis Fonts for the operation of Highlands Golf Course, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Carl. Discussion. Call a roll.
Camp.
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Emery.
Yes.
Eskridge. Fellers.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 22 is the report of claims against the city for December 1st through the 31st, 2014, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Second by John. Discussion. Call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers, Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 23 is the Joint Information Technology Interlocal Agreement between the city and the State Office of the Chief Information Officer, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Trent. Discussion. Call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge, Fellers, Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Public hearing ordinances second reading are items 24 through 39. Ordinances third reading. Item 40 is amending Chapter 8.14 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to eliminate the requirement for school-age child care programs to be regulated under LMC 814, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion. Carl.
Yeah, this is the first of several we've got coming up here that have to do with the Department of Health and understanding that there's some duplication with some of the city and county health requirements and versus what the Department of Health and Human Services does. So it's simplifying government.
And this is, these are all passed under the recommendation or brought forward under the recommendation of the County Health Board. So.
Yes.
And school-age childcare programs still will be regulated by the state.
Exactly. All right. Call the roll, please.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge, Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 41 is amending Chapter 24.38 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to update the on-site wastewater treatment systems and adopt state regulations, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion. Call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook, Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 42 is rescinding the City of Lincoln Design Standards 4.10, operation and maintenance of on-site wastewater treatment systems, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 43 is approving a real estate purchase agreement between the city and TR Novak LLC for the sale of city-owned property generally located at 5255 Northwest 12th Street, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Larian. Discussion. Call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Ordinances first reading and related resolutions, item 44 and 45. Resolutions on first reading are items 46 through 47. Pending list are items 48 through 51. Anyone wishing to address the council on a matter not on this agenda and not planned to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time, since today is an open microphone session.
Anybody who'd like to speak, your opportunity to come forward. Okay.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one coming forward, I would move for adjournment and also remind the public that we will not meet next Monday, as it'll be the observation of Martin Luther King holiday.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion. Call a roll.
Camp, Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers, Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
We are adjourned.